Let's go.
We may live over 5,000 miles from Lincoln Financial Field, but what we lack in proximity, we make up for in film study. And each and every week, we'll be bringing you in-depth film breakdowns from across the pond and the Sooner State. Welcome to On the Shane Page. I am your host, Shane Haff. You can follow me on Twitter at ShaneHaffNFL. And I'm joined by BGN's own film guru, Jonny Page. Give him a follow on Twitter at JohnnyPage9. Jonny, how are you doing this evening?
I'm good. It doesn't feel like a Tuesday. It feels like the week's gone on forever. I think I've been watching this game film for far too long. It feels like the game was a while ago, but I guess that's all we can do. Massive win. Massive win for the Eagles. I had a few comments from people asking like how I watch it from the UK. Like, do I hide the score? Do I hide the phone? So yeah, I'm one of those psychos that gets up about 5 a.m. My phone is in the other room. I set my watch as an alarm. I do not turn on the internet. 4G and internet are turned off. And I sit there and watch for about 2 straight hours as if the result has not actually already concluded. It's basically just the way I do it. So for those of you wondering, I do not know the score. I do watch it live just like a fan. I celebrate. I get stressed. It's quite weird having your phone off for these days for 2 straight hours just watching the game. And then, basically I finish and go to work. So that day at work, especially when it's a Thursday night game, it's like that Friday is make or break depending on if the Eagles win. So it was a very good Friday. It was a very, very enjoyable win. I was stressed early on with the offense. I think we'll get into that a little bit later. But I really enjoyed watching the defense as well. So a massive win though. I don't know. I haven't really looked at the numbers. I'm not really good at those kind of things about one seed and stuff, but I'm pretty sure in terms of the NFC East race, that's about as big of a win as it gets, isn't it, at this stage of the season?
Yeah, it's a huge win for the NFC East, especially because the Eagles have quite a bit more difficult schedule remaining than the Commanders. So it was key to pick that one up. And actually, for the 1 seed race, obviously you need some help from Detroit losing. But this game is kind of paramount because if the Eagles lose to the Rams on Sunday, it basically makes it where they could not be the 1 seed, barring like a total collapse by the Lions. So really important game coming up too. But it does feel weird to do this after a Thursday game. I've been posting out my clips on Twitter and people are like, move on. Like, why are we still nitpicking this game? I was like, I don't know what to tell you. It's Tuesday. I post clips on Tuesdays. So it does feel a bit strange, but it is what it is. And we'll be back on a normal schedule, I guess. Next week, we'll probably get the show back to a Wednesday as per usual. But for those of you listening, watching, wherever you're at, make sure you're following us on all social platforms. Obviously, Jonny and I are on Twitter. We both created Blue Sky accounts that we're not currently using. Buffer is having a hard time posting videos there right now, and I simply don't have time to manage too. But, you can follow us on social medias. We're at YouTube at Eagles Pin Pull. The Eagles Pin Pull Network is on anywhere you want to stream your podcasts. I will get video clips over to Blue Sky as soon as Buffer creates that functionality, and I'll have stuff there. I'll get my stat posts out there in the meantime. But also, if you're one of those that's leaving Twitter and wants to keep in touch with us, you can check out our Patreon at patreon.com/ontheshanepage. We've got a Discord server and we're in there chatting. We've got like 15, 20 people in there at this point, and we chat a lot not during games. They chat during games, but we chat a lot after games throughout the week as we watch film. Also at their request, we set up a little bot that will auto post our tweets in there. So if you're leaving Twitter, you can see all our tweets. You can even watch the videos and things without leaving Discord. So you could check that out if you want to. But Jonny, I've got to ask you live because you asked me right as I hit the go live button, should we start on offense or defense? And then it just like rolled the intro video. So we're going to plan the pod on the pod. Do you want to dive into the offense or the defense first this week?
Let's do defense. I feel like in honor of Vic Fangio and this defensive performance, let's start with the defense, Shane.
Yes, I would just like to say to everyone that was worried about hiring Fangio after 2 Fangio disciples, we told you guys. We told you it'd be okay. We told you he's different than everybody else that runs the system. man, this defense is so much fun to watch. Jonny, I'll let you give us your first point. Where do you want to go on the defense?
Yeah, in true stuff, this has been a rushed week. For those of you guys listening, I've been busy. So I've realized we put our points in and I always try and link them together, and I haven't this week. So there's not really like a great theme for me to start. So you know what? I'll start with some short yardage stuff, Shane. When you think of Vic Fangio's defense, anyone listening, you think of split safety, you think of safety rotation, you think of playing everything in front of you. You don't think of short yardage defense. And I think this sums up I guess a defense better than anything was how aggressive they were this week in short yardage situations. They had a couple, and there was a few of them where they had a really interesting look. Obviously, the most famous one is, or most famous, but the most well-known one is the stop on 2nd and 1, where they stopped the Washington Commanders on 2nd, 3rd, and 4th and 1. But there was another play earlier on that sort of hinted at how Fangio was going to play in short yardage situations. So if you look at, it's all going well, Sean. I'm now currently looking at my offense thread as well on my phone. So do not look at that thread. If you could open up, please, play number 8. And this was the first sign that we saw Fangio was basically not going to muck around in short yardage situations. So what he was doing in short yardage was he was putting Brandon Graham inside, he was putting Zach Bourne as an edge, and then he was playing essentially 3 defensive tackles, including Jordan Davis. This is a pretty aggressive front. Milton Williams, Jalen Carter, Jordan Davis, and Brandon Graham. I wrote this in the BGN article this week, but like Brandon Graham does something that no other Eagles edge defender can do, which is kick inside. And if you lose Brandon Graham, you can't do any of this stuff because you can't kick inside Sweat, Nolan Smith, or Bryce Huff in this particular role. This was a sign of things to come. Washington didn't really know how to play this 5-man front. I don't think they adjust at all here. I think they run the exact same play that they were going to run anyway when the Eagles had a 4-man front. And Brandon Graham and Zach Bourne, or Brandon Graham, Milton Williams, end up blowing this one up. And this was a sign of things to come because later on in the game, with really the game on the line, this is probably the biggest drive of the game. Washington was 2nd and 1. Now, there are some defensive coordinators who will almost give you a first down on 2nd and 1. In fact, I think back to Jonathan Gannon. I think back to Sean Desai. I think they'd have been quite happy to go and just keep things in front of them on 2nd and 1 because what do teams do a lot? They essentially try and take a shot play on 2nd and 1. Washington ran the ball 3 times on 2nd and 1, 3rd and 1, 4th and 1. They had no intention of a shot play. They were just trying to get the first down. And the Eagles just fully stopped them. And what I love about this was every play was a different formation. Every play was slightly different personnel. And every play was a different player making the play. So if we start with clip 10, Shane, and we can roll them pretty quickly, 10, 11, 12. Clip 10 was all about one man, Jalen Carter. I can't remember the name of the Washington guard, Shane, the right guard. I don't know if you know him.
Sam Cosme.
Yeah, good player. Played really well. Actually had a good game against Jalen Carter. But even in a good game for Jalen Carter, a good game is like, he still makes like 6 or 7 ridiculous plays. But I think actually he handled him one-on-one quite a few times. Jalen Carter just flat out blows up this 2nd and 1 play. That one-arm club move is got to be one of the most dominant moves in the NFL right now. I think the thing I really like, though, is Nakobe Dean here. I'm going to talk more about rallying to the football with my third point, but one player can't make plays on 2nd and 1 because running backs will invariably fall forward. Even though Jalen Carter makes the play here, he possibly gets a first down here, I think, without Nakobe Dean flying to the football. The Eagles were really good at this all game. This is a really good fit from a 4-man front. I almost get the feeling, to be honest here, Fangio was like, if they get the first down, it's not the end of the world because it's quite a spaced out front. But in the end, Jalen Carr basically wrecks it. And then I think when they get to 3rd and 1, he's like, right, now we've actually got a chance here. So if we go to the 3rd and 1 play, this is a very different look. You've got Jordan Davis in the middle. I've actually got a different angle to you, ironically. So you've got Jalen Carter and Moro Jomo next to him. Then you've got Brandon Graham and Zach Bourne as well. And this is mainly Jordan Davis. Like, this is pretty much Jordan Davis. And then Brandon Graham and Zach Bourne come in as well. And this is a seriously good rep of run defense here, especially from Jordan Davis. Jalen Carter goes for the move and gets pushed back. But Jordan Davis does a fantastic job getting really, really sort of up the gut early on. And once again, you get that rallying to the football. Brandon Graham just absolutely wrecks the tight end. If you haven't seen this play, do not try and block Brandon Graham with a tight end because it's pretty embarrassing for the tight end. Graham destroys him and celebrates.
Is that Zach Ertz?
Or two.
I don't think it is. I don't think it is.
Either. No, if you're using Zach Ertz to block Brandon Graham, then good luck. No, they're not. They are not using Zach Ertz at all, and he dominates him. Then my favourite play, Shane, without a doubt, is the 3rd and 1. Like, I don't know what more we can say about Zach Bourne because I only have a lot of words to put into play. So watching live, I don't know about you, my gut was like, Zach Bourne is an off-ball linebacker. He has seen this play happen. He's gone sprinting round and managed to tackle Jaden Daniels for a loss. Then I've watched the replay and I've realized, number one, he's an edge. He's not a linebacker. He's actually got a pulling guard coming straight for him. So it's short yardage situation. Not only has he got to actually make the tackle, he's got to get off the pulling guard and still make a tackle before Jalen Daniels gets a yard. Now, shout out to Jalen Carter because I think he wrecks the play early on, which gives Zach Bourne a little bit of an extra beat to make this play. But this is a crazy good play. And I think it just shows sort of, there's more examples as well, but these four, like how good this Eagles defense was in short yardage. And what I love about that is not what I associate with Vic Fangio at all. If Vic Fangio's defense can start winning in short yardage situations as well, it's not really when they're known to excel, then there's not many things this defense can't do right now. I'll talk more about them later on, as all of us, well, I guess both of us were in our points, but as a team defense as a whole, I was really, really impressed with how they handled short yardage. And what I liked was that they challenged Washington to think of something different. They played different fronts. They didn't play standard 4-man fronts. They had sort of 6-man fronts on 2nd and 1. They had a 5-man front on 3rd and 1. They had different personnel. They used a Jomo. They used Milton Williams. But I think the key, Shane, was Brandon Graham lining up inside. 36 years old, right? Brandon Graham? 36 years old.
That sounds about right, yeah.
And still an integral part of this run D, because I don't think the Eagles can do what they do without Brandon Graham right now in short yardage, because the ability to kick inside enables Bourne to go to edge, and Zach Bourne is an incredibly good edge defender apparently, as well as an off-ball linebacker. So there you go.
Yeah, it's crazy. I'm gonna jump into my point because I'm going to talk about Jalen Carter, and I use a few of the same clips here. So every week we put out a player spotlight for the Patreon community. This week it was tied between Cam Jurgens and Jalen Carter. And I'm just going to talk about both. Obviously, Cam Jurgens on the offensive side, because I kind of wanted to talk about both anyways. But Jalen Carter was a monster in this game. And he doesn't light up the stat sheet. He doesn't have a sack. I think he only had a couple of tackles. But Jalen Carter dominated this football game. And so I'll throw up a few clips here and just let you guys watch. But he's nearly always going to be lined up on this right side, so I'm not going to circle him every time. But on this first play, he's just going to club the right guard to the side. And just boom, that club move. And he doesn't end up with the sack, but he basically creates that sack for Josh Sweat. If you just get any kind of a push as an edge rusher, Jalen Carter is going to create opportunities for you. And Josh Sweat's a big beneficiary on that one. Now we're behind on the back view on this next one. Thanks, NFL Plus. Wish I could always get the behind view, but he's just going to club by here. He's going to make an inside move on this block. They're trying to block down and get to the outside, and the tackle can't even get to him. And he's already by and makes a diving tackle. Like, just to be able, all he really gets here is an arm. He gets that left arm hooked around, and he's able to bring the running back down in the backfield. He was just incredibly disruptive in this game. They ran some stunts for him. This time it's going to be Milton Williams from the right of the screen that rushes into the center to try to create some space there. And the ball has to come out fast, but like Jalen Carter is about to kill Jaden Daniels. Josh Sweat's coming off of the edge. He's about to hit Jaden Daniels. And unfortunately, that's like the worst DPI call I might have ever seen in my life that gave the Commanders a first down. Anyways, but just really good job rushing the passer. Some of it's through double teams. Some of it's just winning. Some of it's through them looping him around. And then we get to the stops that you mentioned. And this is a key point of the game. The Eagles are up 2 and the Commanders are in field goal range, right? And it's in the fourth quarter. Like, if you give up this first down conversion and they go score a touchdown, or even if they just run several more minutes off and kick a field goal, you're sweating this out. And on this 3rd and 1, he's just going to get around the offensive tackle, and he makes a play in the run game, just swipes him to the side and makes the tackle. And then that 4th down play, and you already talked about it, but the way he just blows this up in the backfield. And I know he doesn't make the tackle, and it's a great job by Reed Blankenship to, come flying downhill. It's a great job by Zach Bond to fend off the pulling center and finally make the play. But Jalen Carter had an incredible game in this one. And it doesn't show up a lot on the stat sheet. And that's unfortunate because Jalen Carter is dominating week after week. And, last year, he only played 599 snaps on the season. He's played 109 snaps in the last 5 days. He played 100% of the snaps on Thursday night on a short week. And so, as long as he's able to sustain that volume and doesn't start to peter off, which players do that, like defensive linemen do that. The Eagles have been so used to so long for rotating their linemen so much. Not every team in the NFL does that. And I think the only reason we're worried about that with Jalen Carter is because of what happened last year when he was a rookie, when he was playing the most snaps he's played in his career. He seems ready. Watching the film, it didn't seem like there were plays he was taking off because he was gassed. Jalen Carter's on a heater right now, and hopefully he can keep riding that.
Yeah, I love the fact you mentioned. I mean, I was waiting for you to mention it as a stats man. 66 out of 66 plays is sort of absurd. I know that Fangio doesn't like to rotate, but even I was a bit like, he played every snap. Like when that stat came out the day after, I was like, what, he played every single one? Yeah, it's funny that I saw some offensive line guys like Brandon Ford, and they were tweeting compliments about the Washington guard. And you know what? I think I agree. I think the Washington guard did a pretty good job. They left him one-on-one quite a lot in this game. And it's a sign that you're dominant when I think Jalen Carter still had an outstanding game. And people were like, you know what? Washington's guard played quite well against him. You're like, played quite well when he made like 6 splash plays. Like, that's the kind of guy you're talking about. There's one of the plays you didn't show, and neither did I, where he makes a diving tackle. And like the athleticism for a guy of 320 pounds, like he's been a freak since they drafted him, Shane. Like, we've known it. People have said it. Like, everyone who I think loves film has said the second they drafted him, like, this guy has defensive player of the year talent. And I've said it for ages and ages. Right, I'm going to get into my second point. I'm going to stick with an individual.
Before you do, real quick,
go for it.
Sam Cosmi's really good. Like, I remember watching him coming out of the draft. He's a really good player. That Carter, I mean, he's not like Zach Martin level good, but he's a really good player. This wasn't just some, like you said, this wasn't just some bum at right guard. Like, that's a good player that Carter was lined up against.
Yeah, that doesn't surprise me. I don't think anyone can keep Carter quiet unless he's fully like having a bad week or conditioning's a problem. I think when he's on, he'll always make splash plays. I want to talk about individuals for a little bit longer because I want to shout out someone you mentioned in the last bit. And just because I feel like no one ever talks about him, Shane. I think 3 like game sealing interceptions this year. And I wrote this in my PGN article, but when do we talk about Reed Blankenship doing something wrong? Like, when do we talk about him not being particularly good? I think his understanding of zone defense is amazing. I think his man coverage is where his weakness is at, but you can hide that. You don't need him to do it that much. He's exceptionally good coming downhill, and now apparently he's become our clutch like finisher with these interceptions. I'm not going to steal your thunder too much because I know you're going to talk about playing bunches. I'll just show one clip in particular. It's actually a Zach Bourne clip again, but play one on my film, Fred, Shane. I won't go into too much detail about how they play bunches, as I mentioned, because you're going to talk about box, which is going to make me laugh because we laughed about Fangio not using box about 2 months ago. They also run tricks on this play. Those of you that know Fangio's terms, essentially, when the opposition when the offense have 3 receivers to a certain side, especially with a bunch, the Eagles will quite often call tricks, which means the backside safety will end up playing to that strong side. They ran it quite a few times in this game. And I've said for a while, like, I think Reed Blankenship is as good of a trick safety as there is in the league. He always reads this well, always. If you go back to the actual initial All-22, Shane, I'm not even convinced, even if Zach Bourne doesn't make this play, I think Reed Blankenship might make it. Like his back pedal, his eyes, I think he genuinely may knock this ball out. I don't think he'll pick it because I think the way he's jumping. But he reads this so well. And then the interception is an exceptionally good play by Reed Blankenship, who genuinely deserves a bit more. He gets no national praise at all. I was listening to podcasts in the offseason talking about the Eagles' defensive sort of talent and people saying, that replacement level safety. And I just don't see it. Like, I don't see a huge amount wrong with him. This interception is absolutely perfect. So if you pause it, Shane, just for 1 second, if you're watching, before the ball's released. So Washington are essentially running like a sort of version of a 3-level stretch to an extent. You could call it dagger as well. There's a deep route, and then there's an out route, and then there's a short route. The way this plays out against cover 4 or whatever, or the quarters the Eagles played a lot of, or whether this is quarter half or whatever, essentially Jalen Daniels expects Reed Blankenship to run with the post. And that is the way traditionally that safety would be taught. And I imagine that in the film room, Reed Blankenship is supposed to run with the post. There are two things he does. Firstly, I think he has an insane amount of trust in Quinion Mitchell to actually think, you know what? I think he can handle the post. And the second thing is he backpedals just enough to make Jayden Daniels think he's covered the post, but he's never covering that post. He knows exactly where this ball is going, like immediately. I almost think he baits him. I think he could actually break earlier on, and I think he waits until the exact moment when to break. I think he's looking at Jayden Daniels this whole time. I think Jayden Daniels was confused all game, to be honest, by the Eagles defense. The funny thing is, on the whiteboard, this is the perfect play call for the Eagles defense that they're running. If football was on the whiteboard, you could draw it, nice little X nose on the field. You'd say, right, the safety's going to take the post, the corner's going to help take the post as well, and you get that deep out. But Reed Blankenship plays this so well. And we talk a lot about Cooper DeJean, Quinion Mitchell, Zach Ball, and obviously Jalen Carter. And I just don't think there's many Eagles defenders that are as consistent as Reed Blankenship. I don't think there's many things he does wrong. We probably won't shout him out very often. And I think just this week, especially coming up with yet another game-sealing interception, as a couple of people are chiming in the comments, he is indeed an exciting Wyatt. He's not the only exciting Wyatt the Eagles have in defensive back. He would be the underrated Wyatt in many ways as well. He just doesn't get any sort of talk about him in the media, in the press. And I just think he's a good football player. I thought he was a good football player for a long time. I've liked him ever since he started, and I've never, ever been worried about the Eagles replacing him. So I thought he deserved a little bit of a shout out. We haven't spoken about him much this year, but he basically plays every snap. He doesn't make any mistakes. Is he slightly limited in man coverage as a safety? Yes. Is it the end of the world? No. He basically does everything at a pretty high level. So, yeah, shout out Reed Blankenship.
I'm curious on, you mentioned, and I've seen some other people mention the that interception that Reed Blankenship should play the post. Is that not quarters? Like, they're playing quarters here, right?
Well, I couldn't figure it out exactly because of what Slay does. So it's that's why I mentioned exactly what it is. Because they played a lot of single high in this game. I think it is quarters, yeah. But I think without knowing the exact rules, I'm not exactly sure what Blankenship is asked to do here. Are you saying that he should be on that all along?
I think at least that's the way that I look at it. If that is quarters, which I believe it is.
The reason why I wasn't sure is because of the way Johnson plays it as well. Because he's not single high, but he's almost single high, which is why I wondered if they're in they're at quarters at the bottom and a half up top. It's difficult, isn't it? I think normally, if you think of maybe not Fangio's cover 4, but I think traditionally on the whiteboard, you run that post safety to try and draw. Sometimes the safety takes. I think what I'm saying is, and I guess I phrase that badly, is that it's the way he doesn't jump it early as well. Because I think you see this thrown all the time against cover 4. This is the perfect cover 4 concept to launch the post. And I think Blankenship does such a good job of almost not telling Daniels where he's going. But it is a weird play because it does look like quarters. But then I think the way Slay plays it and the way just how sort of narrow Jonty Gardner-Johnson is, I wasn't exactly sure, if I'm honest with you.
Yeah, it looks like Chauncey Gardner-Johnson is tricksing, but there's only 2 guys on that side.
Yeah, and the Eagles do that sometimes. They try and take away the crossing route. So I almost think he's reading that crosser. Yeah, it's a tricky one. But yeah, either way, I think whatever the call exactly is, I think Blankenship does such a good job of basically not allowing Jayden Daniels to throw the post, but still basically triggering on the underneath intermediate route.
Yeah, I think it's a really good play. I do think that's the guy that I would say he's supposed to be covering. But like you said, scissor concepts like this, that post and then some inside route breaking out, that's designed perfectly to beat cover 4 because you're going against the leverage of both guys. And so I think he does a really good job of One, I don't know why Chauncey Gardner-Johnson is like that, but it looks pretty clear that Reed Blankenship's expecting him to be like that, because Reed Blankenship just stays outside. Like, he knows if it goes inside, Chauncey Gardner-Johnson has it. So whatever weirdness is going on there, he does a really good job of sitting on it.
Fangio does sometimes run tricks, or whether they call it tricks, they might call it something else, but they absolutely have the backside safety sort of poaching the crossing route, even if it's not a tricks call necessarily against bunch. Really quickly, Shane, was it motion as well before the snap as well?
Yes, it motioned from a 3x1 to a 2x2.
Yeah, so I wonder if sometimes they're told, because obviously you've got to make a last minute change up, whether the backside safety just sort of watches the crossing route anyway, rather than make a last minute call. Mm-hmm. But yeah, either way, I think he does such a good job of getting depth. So even if Daniels wants to throw the post, I don't think Reed Blankenship makes it obvious that he's not going there.
Yeah. Okay. Well, maybe I took us too far into the weeds on that one. So
the weeds are good. The weeds that wait till we get to some of the offensive concepts this week. But anyway, I'll save that for later.
All right. Well, let's jump into my second point, which is the Eagles defending bunch. Washington went with bunches a lot in this game. And we've talked before about defending bunch. And typically Fangio will typically defend bunches with box concept. And so you sort of divide the three guys into 4 different segments they can run into, right? You've got short and out, deep and out, short and in, and deep and in. And you've got somebody watching each of those. Your outside cornerback is the first deep out. Your safety is the first deep in. You've got a slot corner that's your first deep out, and you've got a linebacker that's your first short in. I think I said deep in for the slot corner. Regardless, it's a box, right? But also, because this is trips, the Eagles chose a lot of times to take that weak side safety and have him tricks. He's watching for a third guy to come vertical across the middle. And so the way it essentially plays out is you end up with 3 receivers to the top of the screen, and you end up with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 guys. So you're essentially playing 5 over 3. For those of you counting at home, that leaves you 2 over 2 at the bottom. And so Darius Slay is on an island, and Nakobe Dean is on an island. And so, the Eagles feel comfortable with that they really want to devote this attention to Terry McLaurin. And, this is part of why they consistently lined up trips to Quinyon Mitchell's side, and it just wasn't there. And so you can see this one play out. If you watch to the bottom of the screen, you'll see Nakobe Dean's one-on-one with this running back. Darius Slay's one-on-one with, I think it's a tight end here. This is just blatant offensive pass interference that doesn't get called. Literally just tackles Nakobe Dean, but Jaden Daniels isn't looking at it, or that might be a touchdown, and we would all really rant about it. But look at how they defend the bunch. You're boxing this bunch, right? It looks a little more like a diamond here, but we're boxing this bunch, and we've got a safety poaching over the top. This isn't the only time that the Eagles did that. And again, Jonny pointed out the great play Zach Bond makes on this, and from the back view, you can really see it. Reed Blankenship is diving over. And so there was a lot of attention being played to these bunches that Washington likes to run. Here's another example of it. This time it's actually 4x1 because the running back is offset to that side. And a lot of times 4 strong can mess with rules. But it's essentially the same thing going on. They're going to box this. They've got the safety tricksing across. You can see right at the snap, Reed Blankenship, we're solely looking this way. I'm not entirely sure who's supposed to be responsible for the running back here, because this is a 3rd and 5, and Jaden Daniels should absolutely throw it to the running back to move the chains. But he does the same thing that Jalen Hurts does in this game on a different play. He turns down the guy that's open for probably the first down and not much more. And he's going to try to scramble because it's not man coverage, but also it is. The direction he's scrambling is man coverage, right? Darius Slay is man everywhere he goes on this guy. And so if he can beat Nakobe Dean, it's off to the races. And Nakobe Dean does such a good job breaking down and tackling him in open space. I mean, when I was watching this live and I saw him start to scramble and I saw Nakobe Dean as the only guy there, I was just like, oh, that's a first down. And that's not a knock on Nakobe Dean. Jaden Daniels is just tremendously athletic. And Nakobe Dean is able to break him down and make this tackle. And so the Eagles were not afraid at all to leave Darius Slay and or Nakobe Dean on an island if it meant getting 5 over 3. Now, the Eagles are about to play a team in the Rams that have 2 really good receivers in Puka Nacua and Cooper Kupp. Will they take an approach like that against a team like this? They'd probably do it against a team like the Vikings. Justin Jefferson, let's get all eyes on him. But when you've got 2, stud receivers like they do, I'll be interested to see if they devote the same attention and resources to it. But I thought they did a really good job of locking down those bunches and really just forcing Jaden Daniels to play isolated against Darius Slay.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned the second play. I'm going to say something that I won't tweet or write an article, but a little bit controversial. I don't think the Eagles' coverage was as good as some people have said after this game. I think Jaden Daniels missed a few easy checkdowns throughout the game. I think the Eagles maybe at times were a little bit standoffish in their coverage. And I think basically what they did well was they confused Jaden Daniels, and Jaden Daniels did not want to check it down. I think whether they realized that Daniels just didn't want to play that kind of game. But that was a good example. I think if I was being picky, and I am being picky because that's what I expect Fangio to be doing, I expect them to clean up their play in the flats, especially against 21 personnel, which was off this week. And also, I think at times they let a few too many underneath routes come open. And I think Daniels just didn't throw it for some reason. But there you go. I was just glad you mentioned it. I think sometimes you can praise the defense. Everyone thinks you're perfect and everything's great. And there's always things to work on. Right,
what's funny too.
Sorry, yeah, go.
What's funny too is the Eagles were giving that and Jaden Daniels didn't take it. But Jaden Daniels' average depth of target in this game was 3.6 yards, which is less than half of his normal. So everything was underneath.
And that was the first to the flat.
Yeah, and it was still just such a chore for them to be able to move the ball.
Yeah, right. Before I get into my final point, which is a very quick one, to be fair, and I think your last one is quick. A couple of comments I'll shout out. Firstly, toilet paper's back. He has been missing live. We have been missing reading out the random name toilet paper on the podcast. Glad you've been watching afterwards. And very quickly from All Hands on Deck, he just said he joined. Yeah, we'll go very, very briefly. It's not one of our points. I'll just say edge rushers, nothing to add really that I didn't already know. I think Nolan Smith is a very, very good run defender. He showed it again in this game. He showed he's becoming more of a splash player. I think Josh Sweat's playing well. Didn't really see Bryce Huff or Jadix Hunt in this game. And I've already really covered Brandon Graham earlier. So if you go back and listen to the first sort of 10, 15 minutes, I spoke about Brandon Graham a bit more at length. Is there anything you wanted to particularly add on the edge rushers?
I did tweet one play from Bryce Huff where he wins pretty decisively to the inside on a tackle and just gets blatantly held and they don't call it.
Yeah.
But he's still not playing a lot. And you can see the brace or cast or whatever it is on his wrist. And so I expect him to continue to not play a lot. But Nolan Smith, like you said, making some splash plays is nice. He's really good in the run game. And he's starting to make a few more splash plays as a pass rusher.
Yep. Right. I think it's my final point. And I went big on this in the article this week. I am a scheme nerd. So is Shane. It's why we do this. Nothing excites scheme guys online more than X's and O's and cool plays and funky looks and creativity. And then you see guys like Dan Campbell taking a Lions team to the best team in the NFL by being old school smash mouth. And I think Mike Tomlin's another guy, John Harbour. I think scheme guys like ourselves, and this is, by the way, this is why scheme guys annoy me about Jalen Hurts and the Eagles offense as well, because they're so obsessed with creativity. They ignore the simplicity of basically what the Eagles does or what the Eagles do a lot of the time to win. Where I'm going with this is this defense plays hard. They are physical and they are fast. I don't care how good your scheme is. I don't care how good your coaches are. I don't care how good anything is, the calls. Sometimes the hardest team wins football, and sometimes the defense has to be really, really good. And the easiest way of seeing this is a concept everyone's heard of, is rallying around the football. The easiest way of seeing a well-coached team. And I will say that good coaches go hand in hand with playing hard. Because anyone who's ever played sports, if you play under a good coach and you know what you're doing is going to work, then you are more likely to play hard. So I think if you're playing under an idiot, you are less likely to play hard and rally around the football. Not because of laziness. Every professional player is not basically tries very hard on a Sunday. But there's a different level of emphasis when you think you're competing for something or for someone. So I'm going to show one play. There were other plays I could have shown. I'm just going to show play 6 on my film, Fred Shane. There was one play that Nolan Smith had where he chased backside. There was one play where Jalen Carter had where he helped out. This is just a simple swing pass or screen pass, and I think it's De'Ami Brown does really well, and he actually makes 2 guys miss. He does so well, in fact, Shane, he picks up 4 whole yards because the entire Eagles defense, and I'm not kidding, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 is within about 2 meters of the play. And then even Darius Slay
not
is not
just
far
use
off.
meters to describe distance on a football field.
Oh, damn. Sorry. English. Yeah.
Flag that play. Rewind. Try again.
All right. I want to say yards. Anyway, so however many yards or whatever metrics you use. Like, I joke about this, like, but this is what makes defenses good. Like, this is it. Like, you can do all the fancy stuff, but you know what? If you don't play incredibly hard, Reed Blankenship doesn't need to chase his play as hard as he does. Reed Blankenship doesn't need to fight for a tight end. You know what? He ends up laying a big hit. If you watch his play from the back end, Reed Blankenship could easily stand there and watch this. Look how many players they've got around. Why is he fighting through a blocker? Even Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, I'll give him credit. He's very far back. He doesn't need to come flying down on this. Look at Nolan Smith on the back side. This is a screen pass, the opposite side of him. He's got to fight through a tight end, then he has to force a fake, and he still goes. Jalen Clark's playing 66 snaps, and he still goes. Jordan Davis is very, very large, and he still goes. Like, everyone is going. And it's the basics, but this is the stuff I love. I tell you, this is my favorite play of the week. I am a scheme there, but I'm also someone who's played a lot of sports. Not a lot of American football, being English, but I've played a lot of sports in my life. I grew up playing sports, and I know what it's like to be on a team that wants to win and thinks they're good. And this Eagles defense knows they're good. Like, you can sense there's a level of, like, hunger. They're all under 27, I think I read. There's, like, a sense of, like, arrogance, physicality, and I just love that. Like, you can't outplay the basics. Scheme matters. All the stuff that we talk about matters. The way you coach box matters, and trick safeties matter. But you know what? If you don't rally to the football, if you don't tackle well, if you don't meet the ball carrier in the hole, and you're not physical, none of that stuff matters on the football field. And it's really good to see that this defense is not like a cute Fangio defense that has all the coverage stuff, but doesn't like what's the famous boxing quote? Everyone's got a plan until they get punched in the face or whatever, or in the mouth. A little bit like that. Like, every fancy defensive coordinator can call this perfect play on 3rd and 5 and do this. But you know what? If you don't execute on first down, you don't take away screen passes, you don't rally to the football, none of that matters, in my opinion. So, yeah, my favorite thing about this defense this week was just how hard and physical they are playing.
Yeah, they're a top 5 defense by DVOA now. Remember last year when the Dolphins ran off Vic Fangio because he coaches tough, and they were a bunch of divas that didn't like him? Like, does everybody remember that? That's not happening in Philadelphia. They're buying in, and I mean, you can look. Here's their rushing and passing EPA since the bye week, and the Eagles are way up here in the top right corner. They're better than any defense in the league by total EPA, by success rate. They're best in drop back EPA. They're second best in rushing EPA over the last 2 months of football. And it's so much fun. I remember talking about in the offseason, like, if this defense can just be an average unit, this can be a really good team. It turns out they're one of the best units in the league. It's the offense that's average right now, and we're going to get into that in a minute. But there's so much star power on the offense, and like, once those pieces fully click, this defense is playing lights out right now, and they're doing it against good quarterbacks. They gave Joe Burrow a tremendously difficult time. You're going to see a good quarterback each of the next 2 Sundays in Matthew Stafford and Lamar Jackson. And I'm just incredibly excited to watch the defense play.
Yeah, finish us off, Jane. Final defensive point, and then when he's getting to the offense, because as always, shock horror, we're running over time. Who saw that coming? Yeah. What is your final point? I think I did put it in there.
Well, I'm going to close this half of the podcast by talking about how I didn't like how the Eagles closed the half of the game. I just talked about how awesome the defense is, and this is just a schematic thing I didn't like. I thought the Eagles were far too passive to end the first half. The Eagles are trailing 7-3. You finally kick the field goal. There's some clock management issues when you were on offense that we don't have to get into, but there's 19 seconds left, and Washington has 2 timeouts. And the Eagles play cover 3, all 3 plays here. And it's just too passive. On the first play, when Jaden Daniels releases the ball, the closest defender is 12 yards away from the line of scrimmage. That's just too far off. And you've talked about how missed tackles are a byproduct of being so far off. And look at what happens. Catches it, one missed tackle, the ball's at the 50-yard line with 12 seconds left, and they call a timeout. The clock stopped. Like, now you've just gone from let's get to half to, oh crap, we might give up a field goal. On the second play, this wouldn't be a tremendously big gain, but they've got an out route and Jaden Daniels throws a bad ball. But if he puts this ball on target, it's a catch out of bounds at the 45-yard line. And the clock stopped and there's 9 seconds left and you still have a timeout. And even with that, you watch this next play and this is wide open. Like, Darius Slay is way too far off. The ball's there it's a bad throw again. This ball should be on the 38-yard line. You're catching it inbounds, timeout. You're trying a field goal. Like, if Jaden Daniels doesn't make two bad throws that cost them 5 yards and then 12 yards, they're kicking like a 45-yard field goal to go into half. And that game at 10-3 at half feels a lot different than 7-3. If you miss multiple field goals, you finally go down and you get a field goal with 19 seconds left and you feel like you got some momentum at home. And if in 19 seconds you go give that field goal back up, it's just a tremendously different feel. So it doesn't matter this week and it didn't result in points. I do think it's something to watch. Like, when you're in that situation against the Ravens in a, 28-24 shootout going into halftime, do you play that soft against Lamar and against Isaiah Likely and Rashad Bateman and Zay Flowers and these guys? Or are you going to get up on guys and challenge a little bit more? I just didn't love the approach that I'd rather see you just play, split field safety coverages there and get up and not allow those free releases like that.
Yeah, I think we're the type of podcast that we're not going to just be homers when we win, and also when we lose, we're not just going to pick out the bad. So despite my boo, it was a very fair point, and that drop live was bad because they should have had that, and that should have been a catch. That was wide open, and I do agree that it was a little bit weak at the end, wasn't it? Right, Shane, let's flip it. Let's do offense because, as always, clock is ticking. Do you want to start, or would you like me to start with offense, seeing as you've just been talking?
You go ahead. Start us off.
Right, I will go. I didn't really love the offense this week. I know, like, at the end, the running game was so much fun, and Barkley going mad was like enjoyable. And I definitely do not think it was on Jalen Hurts. I went quite in on that on this week's article. I think he had a couple of throws that he missed, like most quarterbacks do, but I just didn't. I'm going to talk about execution issues, and then you're going to talk about offensive design issues. So I think we might maybe cross over a little bit, but I'm going to talk about like plays that I don't mind the call where there's execution issues. I'm going to start with the first or second third down of the game. So play 2 on my film thread. This was a great game, by the way, for why All-22 matters, because you could think Hurts missed some easy throws in this game until you watch the All-22. Now, I think he should throw this to Devontae Smith on the drag route, and a lot of people agree with me. Now, the safety coming downhill could end up being a little bit of a hospital pass. So Jalen Hurts doesn't throw it. Now, the problem is, Shane, if you pause it when the ball should be coming out to Devontae Smith, which I think is earlier than this. I think it's like now. Like arguably even before that. He's not at the back of his drop. He's taking a 5-step drop from shotgun, and it's too slow. Like, even now, he just hit the back of his drop. And I think at this point, it's too late. And this is what I call like let's say an execution issue. This is a minor detail, which, you know what? The minor details matter. Whether Devontae Smith is too narrow, whether he should be lined up further, whether Jalen Hurts takes the wrong drop. But you need your passing game to be tied to your QB's drop back. And this is an example of it not. Live, this is like the biggest miss in the world. Like, what is he doing? Actually, if he throws that ball and he hits the back of his drop, Devontae Smith could get clattered by that safety. It's tricky. I think you can argue either way. And I think whatever your narrative is, you might be able to defend it. But I can see why he doesn't throw it on the All-22. The really big one, though, that I had a problem with was mesh in the red zone. And this is play 6 on my film thread. This was like the most obvious Jalen Hurts miss of all time live. Watching it live, you were like, what are you doing? You've got 2 receivers wide open. And then you watch the play back and you see Devontae Smith and A.J. Brown literally run into each other. And I joked in the Bleeding Green article, this could have been serious, but I'm not kidding when I say they could have both knocked each other out. Like, they run full head of steam directly into each other. And if you watch Jalen Hurts' eyes, his eyes drop and he starts scrambling the second he sees them run into each other. Now, you could argue, oh, he should have kept his eyes up and kept his eyes downfield and looked for Devontae Smith. Like, the guy's run into A.J. Brown. I know it's easy to say at the end of the day, like, oh, he should have thrown this. But when your guy runs into your own player, at this point, you're like, well, screw this play. This play's over. I've got to make a play. So and you're going to talk more about design, so I'm only going to show a couple of plays, but I just thought execution issues. There were problems with design that I could talk longer about. There were plays that I really didn't like on third downs to do with design. But then there was also execution issues. Like, I don't mind this play, but it's executed really, really poorly. And the thing about high-level football is everyone's a good athlete, everyone's a good player, everyone's got speed on defense. The finer details matter. It shouldn't be hard. Like running mesh on the goal line, one receiver runs one side of the line, the other receiver runs the other side of the line. Like, I could coach this. And they both run directly, basically, down the middle of the end zone and literally straight into each other. It is a calamitous play. Saquon Barkley's spacing is also sort of horrendously close as well. So I think sometimes it's design, sometimes it's execution. I wanted to talk about a couple of poorly executed plays, and I'm going to throw one more in there because I forgot this one.
Before you do.
Sorry, yeah, go.
We had a comment saying that A.J. Brown's blocking is atrocious. It's pretty good on this play.
Yeah, it's the best one.
Although I do think it's really funny that A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith run into each other, and A.J. Brown is the one that gets knocked backwards.
Yeah.
I cannot wait for the Kellen Moore. I cannot wait for the Kellen Moore counter where we now run a play in the game where they run into each other on purpose, but then they bail out and it's wide open for a touchdown. It's going to be
long-term sequencing, baby. One final play I want to show, which is an execution issue, is I also disagree that the running game was good this week, and that's controversial because obviously the running game was good. Look at the numbers, but it only really got good in the fourth quarter. I should have kept the numbers that you tweeted me. So while I'm looking at this, I'll look them up.
I'll get it.
But if you look at play 10, Shane, on my film thread as well, this happened about 4 or 5 times. This is just a standard zone run game, and you have Cam Jurgens and Mekhi Becton, and they're meant to double team a defensive tackle, and then one of them is meant to get to the second level, which is simple stuff. Cam Jurgens doesn't really touch the defensive tackle. Mekhi Becton just blocks him for a little bit, thinks it's a double team, and then gets to the second level, and the play's just blown up. And like nothing wrong with the design, it's just an execution issue. The offensive linemen are not coordinating properly who's meant to get there, who's meant to take the defensive tackle, who's meant to be going to the second level. I was going to say I'm not a run game expert. I love the run game. I'm going to tell you, Shane, if you go back a second, look at what happens when the running back is tackled and have a look at Cam Jurgens and Mekhi Becton. If you pause it here, I'm pretty sure no run is designed where you double team the linebacker whilst the defensive tackle has the running back on the floor. It's quite funny if you pause it there. That's definitely not how it's drawn up. I will tell you that now. And
in that moment, Saquon Barkley was like, man, I thought I got out of New York.
Yes, that is but although we jest, week 11, we shouldn't be making execution issues like this. So I was a little bit disappointed with the execution of the offense early on. Talk to me about the design, Shane. Oh, before you do, have you got the stat of the running game that I was gonna mention?
Yeah, so in the first 3 quarters of the game, the Eagles had 24 rushing attempts for 91 yards, which is 3.8 yards per carry with a 37.5% success rate.
Not good.
In the fourth quarter, they had 11 carries for 118 yards. So they went from 3.8 yards per carry to 10.7. And their success rate went from 37.5 to 81.8%. That is more than just wearing a team down with the run.
Yes.
Game. That is that the interior offensive line was executing very poorly for the first 3 quarters of the game. And then it started clicking in the fourth quarter.
And we'll talk about that a little bit later on. I will just add as well, I wanted to know that data. I am lazy. I didn't look it up. I went on our Patreon Discord. I tagged at Shane Half NFL and I said, Shane, give me the numbers. And anyone listening wants to join the Patreon, $3 a month. You can do that too and bug Shane with wonderful stats requests. At God knows what time in the morning I posted that. And then published in the article as well and claim it as my own in Bleeding Green. I did give you credit, Shane. Do not worry. Right, talk to me about the poor design as well of the offense. And in the passing game in particular, I'm guessing is where you're going to go.
Yeah, I do feel like I have to put a disclaimer out that you may ask for a stat that I cannot find. But I am pretty good at finding that stuff, so I'll give it my best shot. So let's get into some offensive design issues, and this is one of the worst offensive design games I've seen. First of all, we'll start off with Hank, and it's half field Hank, but half field Hank still sucks. Just look at the play and tell me where we should throw the football after we motion. Like, what are we doing? What is this? Where's Hurts meant to go with that football? Like, the Eagles run crash to the bottom, but that's not where Hurts opens up. He opens to the top. So the top is what we're looking at, and we're all just running right next to defenders and turning around and stopping. I don't know. I don't like it. It won't be the last time you see it here. On this next play, I don't know what we're doing here. If you watch, A.J. Brown he's just jogging a vertical route. Devontae Smith is going to run a post route, but he's running it directly into a middle field closed safety. It's not going to be open. And so your only route with a chance is going to be your tight end who's running a little in-breaker route right into literally every linebacker on the field because you're in a 4-by-1 set. And so there's no other threat to the other side of the field to go to the flat or anything like that. Saquon kind of slips out, but where's Hurts meant to go with this football? And he rolls out and he finally hits a check down, but just really poor design. And then we get to another one. This is the Devontae Smith drop, but again, I don't understand what we're doing. We've got A.J. Brown running vertically, and Devontae Smith just runs like a deep stop route while Saquon Barkley releases to the flat. Like, if this is an out route, you've got yourself a sail concept, but it's not. It's a run straight there and turn around into a hook right behind the hook defender. Like, Hurts can't throw this ball. This is an interception if Hurts throws this. And so Hurts has to roll out, and now it turns into scramble drill, and now we get to the sideline, and we throw it into the void, and it gets dropped. That's unfortunate. But I don't really understand what was meant to be open here. And then, again, we're just Hank, just everybody run at a defender and just turn around and look at the quarterback. Like, where are we going with this football? We'll circle our receivers right now. I mean, I guess we're wanting to flare it out to the flat to our backup tight end or our backup running back. Like, I don't know why we're designing a play like that on 3rd and 8, but okay. And then the most egregious one, which, by the way, Hurts scrambles and picks up the first down here. But the most egregious one, 3rd and 7 at the start of the 4th quarter. The Eagles are trailing in this football game. And this is what we dial up. At the top of the screen from a stack, we have an out route paired with an out route, which doesn't work for obvious reasons. And then we have a slot receiver running up the seam directly out of safety, which doesn't work for obvious reasons. And then on the back, we've got like a comeback route to A.J. Brown. So watch the top. One of these guys runs the wrong route, because you would not say, hey, how can we get 2 offensive players in the exact same area? But that's where Hurts is looking. Nothing is open. And then we've got, again, slot receiver running out of safety, double teamed essentially. Or you have a comeback route, which a comeback route is a timing route. I hate timing routes on the backside of route concepts. Like, it is so hard to eliminate a front side concept and get to a timing route. Timing routes, curls, out routes, comeback routes, things like that on time, because that ball has to be out before the break. Why not? Why would you not have, just make this dagger? Have this be dagger, and all of a sudden it's not a timing route. We're running clean, and it hurts his vision over the middle of the field. It's a difficult throw. There's maybe, I don't know, maybe 2 quarterbacks in the NFL that I would trust to get to a timing route on the backside of a concept, and that's Justin Herbert and Joe Burrow. And even if Joe Burrow gets to it, he can't throw it because his arm's not strong enough to get to it that late. So there's 1 quarterback. Now, granted, Kellen Moore had that 1 quarterback last year. I hate seeing timing routes on the backside of concepts. It's one of my pet peeves. I thought and again, incredible effort by Hurts to bail out this crap-tastic play on 3rd and 7 and scramble for the first down. But I thought the design was really poor for a majority of this game. And I get it's a short week, and all of those
Yeah.
things, but you've got to be better at what you're putting out there moving forward. It's nice you got the win with this. That can't be what it looks like game in and game out. And it hasn't been, to be fair.
Yeah.
But this one was particularly bad.
And for what it's worth, you didn't even show my least favorite play, which was you might show it in the next point, the 3rd and 6 to AJ Brown in the end zone when there was just like nothing open except to stop and go. Do you want to? No, you just spoke for a while. I'll tell you what, I'll give you a little breather because I was going to say you could double up on how Washington played the Eagles because I think that ties in nicely. What I will do is just show you maybe a more positive angle of the Eagles offense, but also why it frustrates me as well. Is every time a team blitzes the Eagles, man, they're just good. Like, we just forget. I wrote this in the article. Like, we forget how bad this Eagles team was against the blitz last year with a Hall of Fame center. No one blitzes them, Shane. No one bothers. Like, every time they blitz, the Eagles have an answer. And I'm like, that quick game stuff that kills the blitz, maybe just run a little bit more of it. Like when it's not a 5-man pressure. And I'll give you like 2 nice examples in this game. I think the first one was play 5 on my film thread. Washington bring 5. Jalen Hurts hits his back foot. He immediately knows he has Devontae Smith on a slant route from the slot. He throws it to him in time, 20 yards later. Oh, what a good play. I'm like, maybe run this play even if they send 4. Like, don't be afraid to run a quick slant. Devontae Smith in the slot. They seem to be so much. You're still going to run about execution here because he turns around. I get that. There's the spacing so quick, but I think that's more of like they're blitzing. I've been taught to do that. And I know it looks a bit funny, but at the end of the day, it's not the end of the world because Hurts could throw it to either one of them.
I was going to ask you about that because I'm assuming Goddard was maybe this was like mesh or something, and Goddard just turns around because he realizes nobody's covering him.
Yes.
I was questioning, like, you wouldn't design this play this way. I'm assuming Goddard's like, oh, we might be hot. And I was curious on your thought, but go ahead.
Yeah, no, I agree with you completely. That's how I read it as well, because it does look pretty terrible. And then they ran another really nice play that they ran against pressure again when they checked it down to Saquon Barkley. I think it's play 8 on my film thread. They run 4 verticals, but they're not really running 4 verticals. When they expect pressure, they're basically going to leak Barkley out the backfield, and they do exactly that. It's actually a really nice throw by Hurts as well. And of course, an exceptional play by Saquon. And Devontae Smith runs a hell of a stop and go route at the bottom of the screen, by the way. You not see this route? Oh, yes. But you know what? I'm glad he didn't throw it because we've moaned about them being too aggressive against pressure before. I just think the Eagles offense has answers against the blitz like every single week. They're really good against 5 and 6-man pressures. And the stuff they do, I'm like, just maybe run a little bit more quick game when the opposition isn't blitz. It feels like basically the only time they run Devontae Smith on a slant is when the opposition blitzes. Like, it feels like a counter to like they're blitzing, run a slant. And I don't mind seeing like double slant occasionally. Like, I don't mind seeing it on 1st and 10. I don't think everything has to be as difficult as it was this week. I do want you to talk, Shane, though, about your second point because it ties in nicely to your first point. I don't think it was just the Eagles' concepts this week. It was that the way Washington played them basically negated them. Like, I'll be honest, Shane, I rarely think this. And I say a lot of things on the podcast I wouldn't tweet just to avoid stupid people abusing me on Twitter. But if you watch this game, and honestly, and you said who won the battle, AJ Brown, Devontae Smith, or the Washington cornerbacks? It's the Washington cornerbacks. Like, they won the matchup pretty handily. And I'm not saying from a stats point of view. I'm not saying like, oh, well, could you would say that because AJ Brown was 5 for 64. Is that right? I'm trying to remember now. I'm looking it up as I talk. Yeah, AJ Brown was 5 for 65 and Devontae Smith was 4 for 29. So, of course, they won. That's just a stat count, but it's not a stat count. I'm telling you, the film, they won. The Washington DBs won the film, and that was not what we were expecting. We were expecting AJ Brown to go nuts again on this Washington defensive backfield, and they didn't. And a lot of it was because of how they played in the secondary, which I think should, what do they call? Is that a sequence? No, what's it called? Segue? Yes. Whatever they called it. Transition. Talk to me about why Washington was successful and why the Eagles didn't really help themselves very well.
Yeah, so let me ask you, Johnny, if you were Kellen Moore and a team rolls out with 2 safeties deep, what are you doing?
Run the ball.
We're going to run the ball, and you obviously don't want to let that happen. So now I spin a safety down into the box. We're playing a stacked box. What do the Eagles like to do attacking stacked boxes, single high safeties?
Single high, let it fly. Outside the number, go balls.
Yes, go balls. We can run curls off of that, comeback routes off of that. That's what teams like to do. We got to respect the vertical ball. And then all of a sudden, A.J. Brown stopped running and you're still downfield and we hit those routes. What Washington did, I thought this was really good. And Dan Quinn's a fantastic defensive coach. I had my concerns about him being a head coach, and we'll still see on that. But he's such a good defensive coach. And so Washington played a lot of single high safeties. And I know it doesn't look like that yet. When I roll it, you'll see the safety step down. But when they played single high, we'll get to the snap here. They also had their cornerbacks playing with a lot of cushion. I mean, look at this cushion. We're talking 8 to sometimes 10 or even 12 yards of cushion. So what this does is it lets Washington stack the box, which counteracts your running game. And by playing so deep, it allows these cornerbacks to sit on the normal depth of those curl routes and those comeback routes without having to open up their hips and really drive vertically and respect that deep threat. And it gave the Eagles issues. On this first play, you're going to see A.J. Brown runs an out, and this defensive back at the top of the screen's just sitting on it. He never has to turn and run because he starts from so deep, and he's able to collapse that throwing window. And that's a really difficult throw to make. These out routes for the Eagles are typically much more open than this. And they did this a lot in this game. Here's another example of this look. Like they're 10 yards off the ball, 10 yards off the line of scrimmage, our cornerbacks. It's a stacked
just throw
box.
it to A.J. Brown. Just literally throw it to him. Just snap it and throw it.
Yeah, you could just snap, throw it. They're going to run the ball here, and you run into that mess, and it just gets stuffed. And I'm not saying you shouldn't run into those stacked boxes. The Eagles still have success doing that. Here's what worked. This is a play action slant to A.J. Brown. Again, we've got this same look, right? Stacked box. We've got one safety deep. We've got 10 yards of separation at the snap of the ball. The Eagles just run a play fake. All we need is for this linebacker not to sprint under the slant route at the snap of the ball. He doesn't even have to bite on the play fake. If he freezes for a split second, there is no chance this cornerback can drive onto this slant route and stop it. And this turns into a big game. Just boom, open, run after the catch. It's nice the safety falls down. That's how you got to attack a look like this. And this is something that I haven't seen teams do a lot to the Eagles. I mean, teams played single high against the Eagles, but I haven't really noticed teams this season playing single high, but their cornerbacks were deep. Eagles fans would have been shouting for years about this because every other team would have thrown a screen pass, but the Eagles are incapable of doing that for whatever reason. That's a look that I expect the Eagles to see more from teams that watch this film. And it's that quick game, just like you talked about, it's that quick game attacking the middle of the field that's going to get teams out of that.
Yeah. Do you know what, Shane, when you run an RPO and you throw a quick slant to A.J. Brown and it goes for like 20 yards, do you know what you might want to do?
Sluggo.
Or
just do it more often.
Do it again. Yeah. There's a radical that play. That was a great play. Did the Eagles run another slant to A.J. Brown? I don't believe they did. Maybe when stuff works, stick to it, because it was really obvious on the film. I'll be honest. There's a Washington film guide I subscribe to, his Substack, Mark Bullock, who is excellent. And I can't remember the name of his article, but I get him pop up all the time. I try to find some smart writers of NFC teams. And he tweeted something about Jalen Daniels struggling. And I was like, yeah, or he's put on his Substack. I mean, I think his article that came out yesterday was basically like, I can't believe how well Washington defensive backs play. And I think a lot of that was down to Dan Quinn. And a lot of that was down simply to the Eagles not adjusting. Yeah, it was Mike Sandstrill. Or is that the
Mike Sandstrill?
Is that their zero that Ben Gunter, I think, might tweet about? Connor tweeted about. Yeah, he's good.
Rookie out of Michigan, played some wide receiver at Michigan.
Yeah,
I loved Mike Sandstrill.
Yeah, and in his article, the article was literally called Mike Sandstrill provides bright spot for Commanders defense versus Eagles, and he spoke about how basically good the Eagles defensive backs were. Right, let's end with a little bit more positivity. So, concept of the week, and then I will leave you to finish off with Cam Jurgens. The Eagles running game wasn't working. It wasn't working at all. And the beautiful thing about having a diverse run game at You can mix it up when it's not working. So was it the third or fourth quarter, the Eagles ran a tackle trap with Kenny Gainwell, and it was a sign that maybe they were going to try something else. And then they ran a play, but I've not seen the Eagles run. Shane, when was the last time you saw Eagles run crunch? Like, I don't think it's been in Stoutland's playbook forever. It's a Kellen Moore special. I read a lot about the Lions offense. Ben Johnson loves this play. It's a massive, explosive running play called crunch. And the reason why it's an explosive run play is because it's very hit or miss. So if it goes wrong, it's a tackle for loss. It's a very risky run play. But if it goes right, it can easily create explosive plays. It's play 13 on my film thread, Shane. I will talk about crunch very, very briefly because of the time, but it is going to be our concept.
Did you say 13?
Yes, 13. It is a really easy play to spot, by the way, for anyone watching, if they ever want to know how to spot crunch. It's very easy, basically, because you have both a wham and a trap block on the same play, which you basically never, ever have. I was having some enjoyable time researching like the joys of this play. And I always get the two confused, but essentially a wham and a trap block are an exact same thing. The only difference is that when it's a tight end or a skill player, we call it wham. If it's an offensive lineman, we call it trap. But it's basically the same thing. It's a really nice variant to the Eagles pin-pull run game because it looks a little bit like a pin-pull play. My favorite way of describing it, and this is from a great coaches clinic I read, is a scissor concept. It's like a scissor concept on the offensive line. Because you basically get two offensive linemen run one direction and the other two run in a completely different direction. And the other thing I love about this play is that it hits same side. So quite often the shotgun run game is predictable because it hits to the left. And this, if you pause it just there, Shane, look how quickly Gainwell can get upfield. If you look at, I believe it's, is it Jordan Mailata? Or no, Landon Dickerson, I believe, on that particular block of a linebacker. That's a really tough block. Like it's almost blocking in the back territory. The reason why he's able to get it is watch that linebacker not know where to go. And the reason why is because he's reading the guard. And when he sees Becton go left, that looks like a pin-pull play. The way Becton is going left there, that looks like Becton is kicking out. So you would expect Gainwell to run to the left side. Everything about this play screams run to the left. It looks like pin-pull to the left. Becton's kicking out. The guard sees it, and all of a sudden it's not there. So it takes advantages of essentially linebackers keying on guards. Linebackers have always been taught historically to read the guards because running backs will lie. Look at counter, look at how running backs can take a full step, whereas linemen can't really lie. But you have sort of multiple linemen sort of pulling on this particular play, which is pretty cool. It's a really, really nice variant to what the Eagles do because, as I said, it goes so nicely with pin-pull. I also love the fact that it is hit same side. The Eagles don't run many same side plays. But more than anything, I just love that it's another run play that the Eagles have got in their arsenal. Like, if things are not going well, if the outside zone game isn't running or the inside zone game isn't working, or they don't want to run a lot of counter bash or something, it's just another play that the Eagles can run. So it was really cool to see that play. I'm going to write about it more for BGN at the end of this week, but it's a really nice variant to look out for. It's not something you will ever see called a lot. You simply won't see it called a lot because it's so risky and it can be a tackle for loss, but it can be really, really good against aggressive defensive fronts, especially when teams are in a rush to get up the field quickly. Like, for example, I always think of Jim Schwartz and the Browns. The Eagles got killed on trap plays or wham plays because they were too focused on getting upfield quickly. So it makes a lot of sense to call it against an aggressive defensive lineman. And honestly, I think tackle trap followed by crunch, I think it changed the game. Like, it really did. They were just not running the ball well at all. And the ironic thing is, I think after these two runs, Washington then slowed down a little bit up front, and that enabled you to get some really big runs at the end with Barkley on just standard inside and outside zone. I do wonder a little bit if it's a coincidence that Gainwell came in and they ran tackle trap and crunch, or whether they think Barkley's almost not wasted, but whether it could have just been coincidence that Gainwell was out there. But I wonder if there's something to it, that they ran maybe two different styles of plays with Gainwell out there. Maybe the coaching staff were trying to catch Washington out. Washington would think it'd be a passing play because Barkley wasn't in there. I'm not sure. I just think it's interesting that, like, the two biggest runs of the game, except for the touchdowns at the end. I mean, Gainwell was 4 for 43. Like, it's pretty good. And If I was Barkley, I'd be like, can I run crunch once, please? It gets called once all year, and it's not me in, which just makes me wonder if game well-being in there was something to do with them calling it. But there we go. Do you want to bring us home, Shane, and talk about someone else in the run game? Eagles center, Cam Jurgens. Oh, he's on mute for the first time. Wow.
Muted to clear my throat. Classic.
Wow.
Cam Jurgens was kind of the co-player spotlight player of the week, and that doesn't always mean I'll cover both, but I kind of wanted to talk about both of these guys anyway. So I just want to show some plays from Cam Jurgens, and I think it's pretty phenomenal that Jason Kelce, who's a Hall of Fame caliber player, retired, and you wouldn't know, honestly, just watching. Like, the protections are different because Hurts calls those out, and he's not quite as good a pass blocker as Kelce, but in the run game, the way they weaponize him in the run game is just fantastic. And I'm not going to break down all of these plays, but just show a variety of how they use him. So they use him to pull out to the perimeter, like on this play. And this play doesn't go for a tremendous gain, but they're right there following Cam Jurgens out all the way to the edge, bulldozing people. They use him on combo blocks to get to the second level. So he helps with Becton's guy and then seals out that linebacker and creates a hole for Barkley. This is one of my favorite ones. This is the things that you don't notice live and you see on All-22, but Cam Jurgens has a fantastic block on Dallas Goedert on this play. Dallas Goedert here at the bottom of the screen is going to get pushed into the running back lane, and Cam Jurgens just like blocks Dallas Goedert to keep this hole open, and then still gets to the second level and hits a safety or a corner, whoever number 11 is. On this next one, he's going to get all the way out here and block Frankie Louvu, which is just a pretty impressive block, especially considering how far outside Louvu goes. And he ends up making the tackle at the end, but he's able to chase him all the way out there. Just so good in the run game. Here he's going to basically reach block the defensive tackle. It's not a true reach block because Mekhi Becton still is there helping out, but it springs Barkley for a touchdown. And then these last two plays are two of my favorites because the Washington safeties are not a fan of Cam Jurgens. On this play, he's going to push one safety right here. He's going to push him out of the play, and then he releases him, and he's going to go pancake the other safety. And so it's just funny. And then here he's going to pancake the same safety twice in the same play. On the ground, he's back up. Hey, I thought I put you on the ground. And he just pushes him back down. Now, he's probably lucky he doesn't get flagged for a block in the back here because it should be. But Washington got plenty of calls in this game. But I just think it's hilarious that he pancakes this safety twice in one play. It's like, I can't believe that guy had the goal to get back up. Just go lay back down. And so Cam Jurgens is so much fun to watch in the running game. And the Eagles can do everything that they could do with Jason Kelce in the run game with Cam Jurgens. And that's been such a benefit to this team because they're able to use his athleticism in so many different ways. He's truly fun to watch. If you know, you can't see receivers and things like that watching the game live, just lock in on Cam Jurgens and you'll see a lot of exciting offensive line play.
Yeah, before I leave you to the usual finish, we've got a good comment from Spain. It's warmer there than it is currently where I am. Asking, do you think the team will be able to hold up against a team that goes to 2 touchdowns ahead? I think that probably is the challenge with this offense now. When you become a run-first offense, I feel a little bit similar about the Lions as well, by the way. They're just always winning by miles. I don't know. I think they should. Yes, Jalen Hurts, AJ Brown, Devontae Smith, Dallas Goedert. If they have to throw, I think they've got the talent to throw. I think we've seen them throw. I know the Bengals wasn't a 2-score game, but they got back in that game by throwing the ball, and then they ran the ball at the end when it was out. So I'm not too concerned about that, but I think you can say that about any team, to be honest. It's never easy coming from behind. I do want to say quickly, good thing about Ryan BGN is I can always go back and see stuff very quickly. So I looked at my Cam Jurgens film notes while you were doing that. And I remember how much I loved him, but how weak he was at the point of attack. And this is just some of the things I put in that article. I said every play is a roller coaster. The upside is outrageous, but he has no strength at the point of attack at all. The lack of strength is a huge concern. He's a former tight end. Is he already maxed out? Will we have to take a couple of years for him to be able to hold up in pass protection? But I did say, Jason Kelce is an athletic freak, and there's pretty much no one I've ever seen like him. But stylistically, Cam Jurgens might be the closest match I've ever seen. I have some questions about the pick, but we've all seen firsthand the impact an athletic center like Kelce can have. Who doesn't want to see that continue after his retirement? And it turns out, Shane, I mean, like, it's so similar. It is ridiculous. Like, it's uncanny. And yes, he can get run over a little bit in pass protection. What's his name? The Giants guy. How the hell have I forgotten the best nose tackle in the league? Dexter Lawrence ran him over one-on-one. He runs everyone over one-on-one. His point of attack strength is fine. He doesn't really get beat in pass protection. He's not his strongest suit, and defensive linemen can get at him. But he's just such a good player already. And I feel pretty good because I watched him once in the preseason 2 years ago, and I went full out, like, that's it. We've made it. He was straight away there. And I basically put all my cards on the table just to say that Cam Jurgens is going to be the man after that one preseason game. And I feel pretty good about it because I think he is really, really, really good. Right. Let's get out of here, Shane. Long one for a Thursday night game as well. It was a week ago. Nearly a week ago. And we're still talking about a game that happened.
That's just
5 days.
Just how it goes, I guess. We'll end with this comment coming in on YouTube. Says, love the breakdowns. Thank you so much for the time and energy you put into these. Way more people should watch these to get a better understanding of the game. And we really appreciate that. We really appreciate getting to do what we do. And one of the ways you can help us out with that is just downloading the podcast. Listen to the podcast. There's 8 long form shows a week that come out on the Eagles Pin Pull Network, and then daily, like, quick hitters in the morning, every weekday morning. Listening to that, you can even skip the ads. Just when you hit ads, just skip ahead 30 seconds 3 times and you'll be good. But that really helps us out. And of course, you can always check out the Patreon as well if you want to have some more direct conversations with us and help, support the podcast, give some creative control of the podcast, all of those things. Certainly think it's worth it. You can go check that out for a free trial for a week. So appreciate everyone that is watching live, everybody that's listening later. You can check out our film threads on Twitter if you listen on podcasting platforms and want to see what we're talking about. But we will be back next week, Thanksgiving week. We'll probably record on Wednesday so you guys can have that to listen to on your drives on Thursday to go do Thanksgiving wherever you do that. So we'll catch you guys next week for another episode of On the Shane Page.